Hello, this is the first video in the neuroscience lecture series by Modulus. So first we're going to start with an introduction to the brain. The brain is a three-pronged organ that sits in your skull, pretty much controls every single part of your body. It's divided up into two hemispheres, the right and the left, and it is connected by a thick bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. And the brain is further divided up into four lobes that all have their own functions as well. At the top left, you can see the corpus callosum highlighted in red. And at the bottom, it shows you each of the four lobes and where they're located: the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital. This is the neuron. The brain is made up of many, many neurons that come in all different shapes and sizes. A neuron has a cell body, dendrites, and axons. A cell body is the main part of the cell, that's where the nucleus is, and that's where the cell gets its energy from. It is the little circle portion up at the top. The dendrites are where the neuron receives signals. They're like little branches at the top that are connected to the cell body. The axon is a long, thin fiber that carries a signal over long distances. This long part that you see connected to the cell body, that is our axon. It is covered in something called the myelin sheath, which is a fatty membrane that insulates nerve cells, allowing signals to travel more efficiently. And you can see the little myelin sheaths on the nerve cell. Think of it like how wires have that outer plastic coating that wraps tightly around the electrical wires underneath. That coating is really essential in making sure that electricity flows smoothly. And if the outer coating breaks down, the wire will likely stop working. So the myelin sheath is very, very important. Yeah, you can see all the different parts. At the bottom, we also have the synapses, which we'll talk about in a moment. These are the different types of neurons. As you can see, they come in all different shapes and sizes. They all have kind of their own functions in different parts of the body. So this is how signaling in the brain works. So there are 86 billion neurons, and they're constantly making connections with each other at something called a synapse. It is a space in between two nerve cells. So an electrical signal called an action potential is going to travel down the axon, and it is translated into a chemical signal, a neurotransmitter, at something called the synaptic cleft. Those neurotransmitters disperse and bind to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron. That is pretty much how neurons communicate with each other. For example, let's say you want to move your finger. So an action potential is going to run from your brain down that axon to your finger, which is going to release neurotransmitters at the synapse and eventually telling your muscles to move. The process is a bit more complex than that, with lots of steps in between, but the idea is the same. An important thing to mention here, though, is that the myelin sheath is so important in this process with muscle movement. When you want to move your finger, you can move it instantly. You don't even have to think about it. And that's partially due to the myelin sheath speeding up the signals. So synapses are very important because they're related to something called plasticity. And plasticity is the ability of the brain to change its structure and adapt as it learns new things and makes new memories. Neurons are pretty much forming new connections, and they can't be regenerated. If it dies, it dies. So plasticity is the only way that they can reach and make new connections and strengthen old ones. Plasticity is especially important in making memories, because when new memories are made, or when you learn something new, the neurons are making new connections and strengthening old ones. Without it, new experiences would not be encoded as memories at all. You wouldn't be able to remember anything. And sometimes these changes, plasticity, it can manifest physically as the growth of new spines on dendrites. If you look on the picture at the right, you can see little things poking out on the side of the dendrite. They're called spines. And these spines are like branches on dendrites that are reaching out for more connections. And an increase in the number of spines means more locations for neurotransmitters to bind to receptors, therefore strengthening connections. So, when looking at the photo of the brain cut in half, you can clearly see two distinctly colored sections. They're referred to as gray and white matter. Gray matter, which is the cortex, is the outer darker section that seems to be like outlining the brain, that darker pinkish that you can see. And the lighter part in the middle is white matter. So gray matter is composed of cell bodies and dendrites, hence the grayish color, and the white matter is made up of the axons and the myelin sheath. That's where the lighter white color comes from. Okay, so I want to talk about a autoimmune disorder that is related to some of the stuff that we talked about in this lecture. MS, also which is multiple sclerosis, is an autoimmune and chronic disease in which the nervous system attacks the myelin sheath that lines the axons. So this is going to lead to slower and blocked signals, resulting in symptoms like vision problems, muscle weakness, difficulty with coordination and balance, etc. So this is a picture of, you have a healthy neuron on the left side and you have a damaged neuron on the right side, and you can see all the different parts of the body that this can affect. Neurons are a big part of all the different signaling in your body. They are responsible for your vision. There's neurons connecting from your eyes that go to your occipital lobe and allow you to process things that you're seeing. And when the neuron becomes damaged, those signals don't reach. So there's something called optic neuritis, which is a pretty common symptom of multiple sclerosis. You start having like issues with like vision and things like that. So yeah, that is the end of the lecture. I hope you learned a lot.